Good morning, and thank you for being here to listen to the Dr. Profitiliotti's conference, Astrobiology Diplomacy in an Increasingly Fragile World Order, from Fingers Crossed to Prudence. And I'm going to let you present yourself, and we're going to listen to you with a lot of interest.
Thank you, Anna, and thank you all for joining this session. So I'm a research scientist at the Blue Marble Space Institute of Science, and I've been mainly interested in topics related to the search for extraterrestrial life and its societal and policy implications, let's say. And because of my background in strategic foresight, I've been trying to figure out a way to start becoming a little bit more proactive in our approach towards the search for extraterrestrial life, especially with respect to space policy and strategic initiatives related to space policy. So this is a presentation that is partially based on a policy memo that I published recently, and you will find a link to this policy memo, which is freely available at the last slide of this presentation. I will show it to you afterwards. But let's first start a little bit with the status quo and the background of the situation. So we are, as you may have seen from the previous talks in this conference, we are currently witnessing a reinvigoration of humanity's passion for space exploration due to this new space paradigm shift. This situation where traditional space powers, which were usually nation states, but also the most powerful nation states, are now becoming just one version of actors that are active in space exploration. And we now also have the inclusion of more actors, for example, private actors or emerging space nations. And this creates a completely new, let's say, world order with respect to aerospace. And at the same time, this creates a new kind of struggle for regulations, which are already struggling to keep pace with the new developments in technology, and especially concerning the search for extraterrestrial life. So regulation usually follows technology, but when we talk about the search for extraterrestrial life, which is arguably the most crucial endeavor in astrobiology, there really is no regulation currently that is applicable. You will see this in a minute when we will discuss that. But let's first start a little bit with what is the search for extraterrestrial life and how this endeavor is going on now and how it might proceed in the future. So the search for extraterrestrial life is, as I mentioned, the most crucial endeavor of astrobiology, and astrobiology is the study of the origins, the evolution, the distribution, and the future of life in the universe. So you see how the search for extraterrestrial life fits most of these aspects of astrobiology, and some other aspects are also filled by terrestrial biology in space, including human presence in space. So astrobiology might be perceived in a way that also includes space settlement or space biology. Now, with respect to the search for extraterrestrial life in particular, we can perceive this endeavor as consisting of three phases. The first one, which is the current phase, is the pre-discovery phase, where we do not actually have any detection of an extraterrestrial life form. And this phase might transition into the discovery phase afterwards if we find if we detect any indicators of life beyond Earth. And after this detection becomes concrete and confirmed, we might see the search for extraterrestrial life moving into the post-discovery phase, which is all about the long-term, let's say, implications of this confirmed detection of extraterrestrial life to institutions, to worldviews, to societies in general. There is literature on that, so you can send me a message if you want to hear more about that. But what you need to know about the process is that it consists of three phases, and the evidence that is being sought through this endeavor is twofold. One part is the search for biological indicators of life. These are called biosignatures, and these are proxies mainly for microbial life, either extant or extinct. And there is also another strand of work where scientists are looking for technological indicators. These are called technosignatures, and these might be communicative signals or artifacts in the broader sense that might be proxies for existing or extinct sapient or intelligent life that is capable of producing technology. So these are this is how the search is currently conducted. Now, both the search for microbial life and the search for intelligent life suffer from particular problems of jurisdiction and enforceability of regulations, especially related to independent private space activities. Completely independent private space activities are not covered by any kind of regulations in this sense. The search for microbial life is covered in the pre-discovery phase that we are currently witnessing by the planetary protection policy, which is inspired by Article number 9 of the UN Outer Space Treaty. And this is a policy aimed at preventing the exchange of biological material between Earth and other celestial bodies to prevent this sort of biological cross-contamination that could occur if terrestrial life was transferred to another celestial body or extraterrestrial life was transferred to the Earth's biosphere. But these planetary protection policies are mainly voluntary, although some space agencies like NASA, for example, have started implementing them in their own internal regulations. But these policies are not binding for private actors that might want to do their own space exploration missions completely end-to-end, independently from any governmental space agencies. But the situation is even worse for the search for intelligent life. There are currently no legally binding international agreements at all. I mean, not even Article number 9 of the Outer Space Treaty is applicable in this situation, because this is just about contamination, and this does not include any aspects of intelligence in the way that the Article number 9 is formulated. But there is, again, a body of voluntary measures, let's say, captured in the International Academy of Astronautics Declaration of Principles concerning the conduct of the search for extraterrestrial intelligence, which is a document that encourages transparency in the search for communicative signals, especially self-initiated transmissions from Earth, like messages leaving Earth towards putative extraterrestrial receivers. But this, again, as I said, is voluntary and non-binding. So you see already that the current situation is it's not even reactive. It's there is no regulatory framework that can be leveraged to help govern the search for extraterrestrial life in its current phase. And we see here an interesting confluence of policy gaps of both the search for microbial life and for intelligent life. In the case of potential extraterrestrial artifacts that might emerge either in our solar system, might be detected by missions in our solar system, or passing by our solar system as perhaps interstellar objects. Because such artifacts do indeed carry a contamination potential, let's say. We don't know if they have some sort of bioburden, or they might have any sort of biohazards or any other sort of activity that could be potentially harmful to terrestrial life. So this might fall into the planetary protection guidelines, which again are non-binding. So even in that specific case of an extraterrestrial artifact, the current policies are voluntary and non-binding for non-governmental actors who have not decided to implement such guidelines. So this is a challenge for such new kind, let's say, of activities that cannot be effectively regulated by these non-binding policies, and they cannot be guided and cannot offer any guide rails for the global governance of the search for extraterrestrial life in either the current pre-discovery or the potential future discovery and post-discovery phases. The problem behind this situation is that the discovery of extraterrestrial life is considered a wild card in space diplomacy. So space diplomacy, space policy, and space governance have mainly not considered, let's say, seriously the search for extraterrestrial life up to this point, because of the fact that the discovery is presumed to be a low probability event. But at the same time, this neglects the magnitude of impact, which creates this blind spot in the assessments and also in the regulations that I mentioned before. But wildcard events are events that are presumably of low occurrence in the sense of the probability of occurring, but they are events of very high consequences. And this has already been recognized by the World Economic Forum, which recognized the discovery of alien life as an X factor, as a wildcard, which might be framed as an emerging global risk of possible future importance with unknown consequences. So despite of its presumably low probability of success, if life is found, the implications might be immense. And as the landscape of the new space sector diversifies, so does the landscape of the search itself. And we see an increased diversity in state and non-state actors participating in the search for extraterrestrial life and intelligence right now. These activities are neither unified nor coordinated. We have, for example, China's Mars mission, which might be successful in returning samples from Mars. We have the fast telescope observations looking for signals, extraterrestrial signals from potentially technology-capable civilizations. We have private Venusian missions and privately funded projects through the Breakthrough Listen and the Galileo project. This is further accentuated by the fact that scientific discoveries can also occur serendipitously, so unintentionally or accidentally. So on top of all these diverse activities already happening in the landscape of the search for extraterrestrial life, we should also add other kinds of private activities or military activities that might not be searching for extraterrestrial life, but could still generate leads for a discovery accidentally. So you understand now how complicated this situation is. And this is a serious issue now that calls for proactive science diplomacy interventions to anticipate multiple future scenarios involving all these diverse actors and settings. And these science diplomacy interventions also need to leverage anticipatory diplomacy to encourage coordination and cooperation among actors in order to prevent conflict. And this is what I want to discuss in the remaining slides. So first of all, what constitutes science diplomacy, and why do I think that science diplomacy is important to help us move towards a better place, let's say, with respect to how the search is being conducted. So there are three aspects of science diplomacy that you can find in the literature. The first one is science in diplomacy, so using scientific advice to inform frame policy objectives, to inform peaceful, let's say, relations among states. There is also the aspect of science for diplomacy, which is using scientific cooperation to improve international relations as a spillover effect, let's say. And there is also the diplomacy for science aspect, which is the thing that might more easily pop into one's mind when one is thinking about science diplomacy, which is using international relations to facilitate scientific cooperation. So already existing international relations or new kind of alliances to facilitate scientific cooperation. So we could perceive an astrobiology science diplomacy or an astrobiology diplomacy, as I say here, as symmetrical, let's say, to the general definition of science diplomacy. And we could perhaps imagine astrobiology in diplomacy in these examples, for example, advising policymakers on planetary protection policies for international space missions, or providing scientific input for international rules regarding exploitation of space resources and other kinds of space commons, or other examples. We already have something like that, let's say, with the current situation of the cost panel on planetary protection, where scientists are providing up-to-date information to help reformulate the planetary protection policies, although these are still voluntary. The other aspect of astrobiology diplomacy could be astrobiology for diplomacy, which is something that we already see happening, although not, let's say, this is not clear whether this is done for diplomatic purposes. For example, examples could include the organization of international astrobiology conferences to foster scientific cooperation among countries, which could then have the spillover effect of improving international relations, or establishing joint astrobiology research programs among countries to improve international relations. So I would say perhaps the European Space Agency, as an intergovernmental organization, might be following this approach, let's say, in science diplomacy. So utilizing collaborative space exploration research programs to improve international relations among its member states. And the final aspect is, of course, diplomacy for astrobiology, which would be symmetrical, let's say, to astrobiology for diplomacy. Examples could include formal collaborations between space agencies for Mars sample return missions. We've seen that already happening, or diplomatic channels for equitable access to data of potential signs of life, biosignatures or technosignatures. We have not seen something like that, at least in the public domain, as far as I know. But these are just some examples of what would constitute astrobiology diplomacy. But as I mentioned before, astrobiology diplomacy needs to become anticipatory. And the former US ambassador to Turkey from 2000 to 2003 has already provided, let's say, a first introduction to anticipatory diplomacy, saying that anticipatory diplomacy is an approach to diplomacy that focuses more on multilateral diplomacy and recognizes the importance of multidisciplinary scientific subject matter expertise, emphasizes inclusive and collaborative multi-stakeholder processes, and commits looking into the future to evaluate and prepare for potential developments, which makes this well suited to the changing nature of challenges, of course. And past successes includes, for example, the Montreal Protocol for the stratospheric ozone hole over Antarctica. And now the current Swiss ambassador to the United States rephrased that and combined anticipatory diplomacy with science diplomacy to produce this new definition of anticipatory science diplomacy, which is, in his own words, trying to anticipate the potential benefits and risks of scientific advancement so that the international community can ensure that all countries can benefit from scientific innovations while developing any legal international frameworks that may be necessary to protect or regulate the new technology. So you see that already two key ambassador figures have stressed the importance of diplomacy becoming more anticipatory, and science diplomacy in particular becoming more anticipatory. So what I'm stressing here is the need for an astrobiology diplomacy that is more on the science diplomacy side, but also even more anticipatory, as of the three phases, pre-discovery, discovery, and post-discovery phases of astrobiology, the search for life in space, two of them are actually into the future. So an anticipatory approach is crucial, is of crucial importance for this particular science. And to move this discussion forward, I have published a policy memo with some policy options about implementing anticipatory science diplomacy for the search for extraterrestrial life through the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Use of Outer Space, to facilitate the cooperation for the global governance of the search for extraterrestrial life. And I hope that this policy memo might offer some guidance, let's say, for governing the astrobiology commons across its three phases, two of which are actually into the future. Now, I will just summarize the policy options that I mentioned in this memo, which is available for you to read and share widely if you want, or discuss this with me in the Q&A, or even send me a message later. The first policy option, which I discussed in my policy memo, is to promote the global harmonization of explicit measures related to the current pre-discovery phase of the search for extraterrestrial life in national space laws. And that is because of the fact that, as I said before, planetary protection, for example, or any other policy that could be applicable to the search for intelligent life are right now voluntary. And this means that they cannot be enforced to non-governmental actors. So by making sure that there is a harmonization of these kind of measures within national space laws, we also make sure that these measures would actually be enforceable to any kind of actor where these nation states, let's say, that have these space laws in force, could actually regulate these actors within their own jurisdiction. The second policy option is to encourage international R&D partnerships in the search for extraterrestrial life among public and private actors, and ensure benefit sharing for all nations, including non-spacefaring ones. And this is mainly because of the fact that we see this diversification of actors, and we cannot easily envision the situation changing either way, either becoming fully privatized or fully go back to the previous model where most actors were governmental and the main space power. So how do we move forward within this situation, and how at the same time do we make sure that the search for extraterrestrial life is conducted in a responsible way? Perhaps this policy option could be a way to do that, to encourage public and private partnerships, let's say, for research and development in a way that would also ensure benefit sharing among nations. The third policy option is the creation of a public registry of activities with the potential of detecting extraterrestrial life. And this includes not only activities that are actually searching for extraterrestrial life, but also other activities that might have the capacity, let's say, to accidentally discover such life because of the, let's say, of the equipment that they carry, if I can state it like that. And these could help track and pre-register, let's say, the actors that actually make the detection, and track them, but at the same time also give them credit for these discoveries, either predicted or accidental. And the fourth policy option, which is related to all the previous ones, is the establishment of an interdisciplinary working group within the United Nations Committee on the Peaceful Use for Outer Space on the search for extraterrestrial life. And this is something that we don't have right now. There are models of such working groups that we have seen in the past. For example, the long-term sustainability of outer space working group, which produced a lot of very helpful material, and this could be used as a model to develop this new working group that would specifically discuss issues related to the search for extraterrestrial life and bring that into the diplomatic arena for discussion among these new kind of stakeholders that we have right now. And my final recommendation in the policy memo, and this is my almost last slide, the final slide is this, which is about the memo itself, is that we should first start with creating this working group. So this is a much needed starting point. The other three policy options that I mentioned before can wait, and this will require resources, human resources, financial resources. So the first option would be to establish the working group first, and then the working group can independently evaluate the merits of the other three policy options that I mentioned before, or any other kind of policy options that we might have to make the search for extraterrestrial life a topic in the science diplomacy arena that is also part of an anticipatory diplomacy perspective. And my personal opinion here is that we need this sort of prudent and forward-looking science diplomacy effort to not only to protect humanity against unilateral actions that could pose risks to the geopolitical order or to humanity itself, but also to maximize the benefits of astrobiology, both for the good of all humankind and for unifying the current fragile geopolitical tapestry that we have right now through this sort of transcendental effort, let's say, to address these deeply shared existential questions that most, let's say, of humankind shares about life in the universe and humanity's place in it. And perhaps then, in this sense, astrobiology could be the most critical, let's say, scientific field that can show the strength of science diplomacy as a field that can help bring humanity together. And I would like to thank you for your attention. And this is the link for the policy memo that is available for free. It's open access. And please feel free to contact me in this email address if you have any further thoughts or if you want to discuss this further. And of course, I will take any questions that we have in the time that we have. Thank you all for your attention.
Thank you, Dr. Profitiliadis, for that interesting presentation. Now we can open the floor for questions. We have 5 minutes. We have a question in the chat, I think. Can the link be posted in the chat? Can you, Doctor, paste the link in the chat?
Yes, one moment. Let me.
Yeah. Does anybody else have a question or comment or? Okay, there's
That would be,
link.
yes, that would be the link. I mean, this it's a situation that requires a lot of discussion. Yeah, how will contact with extraterrestrial life change space policy planning? I mean, this question should be part of an anticipatory science diplomacy program. I cannot answer that right now because the way that space policy has been moving forward has to say, let's say, in the best sense, has been reactive, and there is no precedent, let's say, and there is no way to figure out how existing space policies can incorporate the issue of a discovery of extraterrestrial life. There is no how you can contact me through this email, or how do we manage the contact. I mean, we cannot. That's the problem. That's why we need this sort of anticipatory science diplomacy activities. We need to bring this into the diplomatic world and start active discussions, as we did with the case of the long-term sustainability of the orbits with space debris. Although we waited for a very long time until we actually made that an issue. For the search for extraterrestrial life, we will not have this much time, because when the discovery is made, then there is no way that we can be, let's say, proactive anymore. We need to be proactive now, because this is not an issue that is similar to debris actually accumulating around the Earth's orbits, which is gradual and takes some time, or it could be exponential, it could be linear, but there is still a way to mitigate that. With the discovery of extraterrestrial life, it would be, let's say, a phenomenon that is that splits the world, let's say, into two different, like a pre-detection and a post-detection world. Is totally different from a world with few or more space debris. So I cannot really say how this will change, but this needs to be explored through these interventions. There are methods that we could use from strategic foresight to explore how particular events so the policy memo that I pasted in this website is a paper where I discuss these things. Also offer literature in there if you want to look into that, and the policy options. And if you want to contact me, my email address is there as well. But this is right now, this is the start that we need to do. After we do this, and after there is diplomatic dialogue, then we can also start thinking about space policy planning. And what I would suggest is that this new planning for space policies must not change after the discovery of extraterrestrial life, but it must become anticipatory before and anticipate, let's say, the discovery of extraterrestrial life and change before this discovery actually takes place. So this is the only way that space policies can actually work, because it takes a lot of time to negotiate. Yes, so you will find there is a question about whether there are any papers published about this matter. Yes, there are some. There is literature on that. And you will find some references in the policy memo that I linked above, but not enough. There are some, but not enough. If I cannot stress that enough. We need a lot of work in that, because we need that work to be preparatory. If this work cannot be done after the discovery. After the discovery, the situation, the world order, which is already very fragile, geopolitically fragile, let's say, will change significantly, and there will be no time to actually do any of these studies, because everyone would be, yeah, you're welcome. Everyone would be will be interested in looking for ways to gain access to this discovery, and you already see how difficult space diplomacy has become these past years, where it is actually extremely difficult to negotiate either new treaties or new regulations. Imagine if a discovery has already taken place.
We have to close here because we have to open the next session.
Thank you.
Thank you very much, and for everyone to listen to your presentation. And
I appreciate your time. Thank you all.
yeah, have a great day.
Goodbye.